with a legacy before you go. Unless you leave it with a legacy before you go. Welcome to the game, welcome to the show, welcome to the pain, welcome to the pros, welcome to the grind. Your story's never told unless you leave it with a legacy before you go. Your story's never told unless you leave it with a legacy before you go. Welcome to the game, welcome to the show, welcome to the pain, welcome to the pros, welcome to the grind. Your story's never told unless you leave it with a legacy before you go.
Live from iRacing's virtual Chicago street course on the streets of Chicago, Illinois, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to round 14 of the 2023 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. Well, it was the NASCAR Cup Series who made history over the weekend, and tonight the long-standing RSR Cup Series makes history of its own in our first trip to the Chicago street course for the first street race in RSR history. It is not the first street course to be on the iRacing service. We've seen the likes of Long Beach and other tech tracks through the years, but Nolan Rempel, this one is full-fledged and now an official NASCAR track, and we're going to see what the stars of this Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series can do tonight for 40 laps.
Track, as it should be, and no doubt a fun race for these guys here in this one, as it'll be, of course, a dry circuit over the course of the evening here, as opposed to the wet circuits that the Xfinity and, of course, the Cup Series had to contend with over just this past Canada Day weekend. It's bound to be a fun 40 laps ahead of us.
Well, we take a look at where we fall on this 2023 calendar. Tonight, round number 14, a couple of normal and historic tracks coming up. But before we start the playoffs, we'll go to Atlanta, New Hampshire, Pocono, Michigan, another road course at Watkins Glen, and then the Daytona International Speedway on August 28th, at which we will know at that point the field of 16 drivers who will fight for the Full Throttle Cup this season. Chicago, though, the second of two street road races, I guess I can say, in the last 3 weeks. So Sonoma, then Nashville, Chicago here tonight. I guess that means all eyes going to immediately jump to the person who won that road course race a couple of weeks ago at Agnew. Phillip, nobody going to be shocked if he is fast here tonight. But there are some ringers, and a little birdie told me, Nolan, that one Kevin King, who's known to be pretty quick on a racetrack like this, is making his season debut here tonight in Chicago. Of course, all of that happens amidst the backdrop of the championship this season, at which we've seen a couple of first-time winners in the last 2 weeks, including Agnew Phillip on the road course at Sonoma 2 weeks ago, and Landon Mills most recently at the Nashville Super Speedway. So those drivers find themselves on the board. Of course, Phillip's first road course race win so far this season puts him into a very good position, but there's a whole lot, Nolan, of points available, right? Cato P10 all the way to Schmidt 16, half right now of the playoff grid available to drivers on points. If we see more first-time winners, that will shrink, I should say. More of those drivers will fall below that dreaded red line. So we've touched casually on these standings over the course of the season so far. This is going to get more and more critical as the next couple of weeks pass.
Every single week that passes by, the opportunities for the drivers just outside the cut line grow slimmer and slimmer. Currently, of course, San Diego looking to see if he can't get himself up into the top 16 in the points. You can see already 9 of those 16 spots locked out by drivers with wins tonight. It doesn't leave a lot of room to play for the drivers just trying to points their way into the field in this one. So there is definitely, I think, a lot of crunch time that's going to have to do. It's going to have to go down to the next month or so if these guys want to find their way into the playoffs by the end of the season.
And I don't know if symmetrical is the right word, but this racetrack doesn't have, a lot of bends and sweeping turns and elevation changes like a Sonoma, like a Watkins Glen. There's a lot of 90-degree corners here as we see Sam Nieto, one of the 26 cars on track tonight, participating in the final minute and 11, now 10 seconds of qualifying. It's a right-hander, then a left-hander, but 90s here, 90s there. This is one of the most dynamic parts of the racetrack right here through the East Congress Plaza Drive. That sweeping left-hand bend around the statue that encompasses turns 8, 9, and then the right-hander out of it right there was turn number 10. Guess what? 90-degree corner coming up next in turn 11. So these drivers are only going to have to hug that concrete K-rail on the outside into the corner like that. You're going to have to get as close to the concrete wall on the inside of the apex as you can, and then right back out to the wall. The margin for error on street courses like this, slim to none.
Tell you what, I am nervous about the turn 8 and turn 10 Little Kings exiting and entering the East Congress Plaza Drive. It's going to be, I think, one of the big trouble spots for these drivers for the course of the night. You tag, you even look at that wall wrong, it's going to fire you right off into the outside wall. And of course, that is all just a huge hunk of single line racing. There's nowhere to go, and it's a completely blind corner as well. So if ever there's going to be a track-wide pileup, it'll be either there or who knows, maybe we'll get one on East Jackson Drive once again.
We saw pileup in the Cup race yesterday. Although, to your point, there is no weather. The beam shining bright under the Chicago sun as we are ready to go racing here for the first time in Real Sim Racing history. So let's go trackside and take a look at your Get Wet Sports starting grid. And it is Landon Mills on pole position. Last week's winner with 126.090, just ahead of Kevin King in his first start of the season, who will start second. The who's who of road racers continues. Matt Danson starts third, Agnew Phillip at fourth, Cody Harris P5, and Brandon Bowie rounds out your top 6.
Seth Mercer will bring it up in that 7th position with Michael Johnson down in 8th. William Schmidt is in 9th with Thomas George to round out the top 10. Grant Davis and Michael Lariah lock out row 6.
Richard Woodruff gets lucky number 13 tonight. He'll be on the inside row number 7 alongside the number 8 of Alexander Light. Ross Cato and Gregory Shaw will make up row 8 with Steve Tucker starting 17th and Ryan Dunkelberger in 18th.
19th going to be Carl Pooler with Eric Papineau in 20th. Brandon Feder placed 21st. Nieto 22nd. Richard Wolsifer, the last driver to put down to qualify and lap down in 23rd. From there, you've got Michael Kuczynski, Nicholas Amara, and Minazzi Major to round out the 26 car field.
That is a look top to bottom at your Get Wet Sports starting grid. Get Wet Sports is the world's largest and first digital content library that showcases and celebrates creators of all sizes and backgrounds, including iRacing, military gamers, and women in gaming. Getting listed is free. Find out more at getwetsports.com and start on your content creation journey today. So as the field rolls down the front stretch, South Columbus Drive, your first left-hand corner, turn number 1. We take a look at the track conditions. Again, well, no wind, a little bit of humidity, track temp at 86 degrees. This is, I think, what most people would have liked to have seen if you were on site at the race over the weekend. Here's the interesting part of the racetrack, Nolan, and if there's an F1 fan tuning in, they may shudder at the mere mention of this similarity, but this part of the racetrack it's giving me Monaco, right? So we come down South Lakeshore here. This is one of the few non-90 degree corners. It's a right-hand kink turn number 3, and it reminds me of the end of the lap at Monaco, right? You kind of get a double corner here. It's super tight right-hander, but a 45 degree corner, super short, and then you got a solid right-hand 90 degree turn and off and onto the South Columbus Drive, kind of the first half of the backstretch. Just reminds me of the end of Monaco, and I feel like, again, that claustrophobia being up against the K-rails and against the walls is well suited. Now these cars got a little bit more offenders than those open wheel cars do, so they should be able to survive a little bit of contact here or there, but over the weekend, we saw the likes of Chase Elliott go nose first into a concrete wall. I mean, this is a tricky track, and like I mentioned earlier, we'll probably say it a couple of times tonight, there is virtually no margin for error. Cody Harris, though, looks like he's having a blast. He'll be starting P5 for this one, trying to get those tires warmed up.
I find it bold that you mentioned, of course, that this looks similar to Monaco in that little section of the racetrack. I like to think of it more as a reverse Detroit Belle Isle in the last couple of sectors. You know, you exited out with a 90-degree right-hander, and it gradually opens up towards the start-finish. It's the exact opposite, though. It's a right-hand kink, and it gradually tightens up to a 90-degree right-hander this time around. It's almost like you're driving that last section of the Detroit Belle Isle Street Circuit in reverse. That was, of course, before the IndyCar series moved a bit further inwards into the Motor City.
Here's that trip back through East Congress Plaza Drive, and this is certainly the tightest part of the racetrack. As then they go, kind of the really only major elevation change that we see is back up and over the bridge per se, as the road goes up and then back downhill. And here's where it gets fun. Last turn, turn 12. Point them straight onto the front stretch. As always, we're happy that you're spending your Monday night with us on RaceSpotTV as we say, let's go street racing in Chicago.
Already big
Contact
trouble
for the race lead. Dancing, trying to get under Mills. They touched. One car nose first into the turn 1 wall. Mills survives. Here comes King for the race lead.
Brandon Bowie was the one that got the worst out of that deal. He's fallen from 6th down to stone dead last. Side by side for the race lead, though. Mills going to take the wise move back out of that one, though, as Kevin King takes that one, coming down through turn number 4 and out through 5. Back onto South Columbus Drive, this time in the opposite direction as we fire up to turn 6.
They wasted no time getting at it, and Kevin King picks up the pieces and takes an early race lead on the streets of Chicago. Mills right there in second. The contact was between him and Danson. Danson sits right behind him in the number 3 spot. That it's Harris 4, DeMerchant P5. The current running order, first time at speed through that East Congress Plaza Drive left-hand bank past all the spectators. And again, right here, it gets really tight. Hard braking zone, right-hander, turn 11, and one car turned around on the entrance to Congress Drive, and it's the 39 car of Michael Johnson.
And that came when he overshot turn 8, hit the Toyota barriers, and got absolutely crossed up with Thomas George piled into him. As we cross lap number 1 to number 2, it is Kevin King to lead the way from the opening laps as we continue to see the way. Matt Danton moves his way up to second, gets around Landon Mills finally for the second position after Danson's pass or attempted pass of Mills went horribly wrong down to the turn 1, sending about half the field careening into the outside wall.
So let's watch it here. Danson from the second row is a mile back, but he gets hard on the brakes, and Mills doesn't expect that coming. There's the contact. Phillip gets squeezed out. That's how Bowie ends up into the wall. The 44 Lariah plows in there as well. And to be honest, for only one car to get rung up on the wall like that, I think that's best case scenario. I was fully expecting everybody in the wall. And now Danson just drove into the wall. As we take a second, look at what happened to Johnson. Right where Chase Elliott made the mistake that I had referenced earlier, hit the wall, got spun, and as we watch that, the mistakes continue for notable drivers. Danson hit a wall about 3 corners ago, kept it going. Phillip, impatient, tried to push him out of the way, couldn't do so. And Matt Danson now slipping a little bit as he tries to catch up to the race leaders. King pulling away, Mills second, and now Cody Harris up to P3 as here comes Agnew Phillip trying to get inside of Danson. Makes a look on Jackson, but doesn't go for the dive in 12, and Danson will stay in P4.
Got a bit tight there with that turn 11, turn 12 complex as Danson made the cardinal sin of not respecting the K-rail on the inside line. He'll maintain that 4th position for now, but now you can see he's got a lot of damage on the right front courtesy of those pair of hits, and now he's going to be struggling with that. I'd imagine that the rest of this run, quite possibly even further down. You see Grant Davis dropping down the timing order, so problems have set in with the number 24. We can see him actually here in that front end of that car, absolutely demolished on one of the Meta Classic turn 1 lockup.
And oh, look out. Yeah, there it was. I mean, not even close to the braking zone. And you can see the front of that car just got torn to shreds. And something tells me we're going to be seeing a lot of those self-inflicted errors over the course of the night, right? You miss your braking zone at a place like Coda, doesn't mean anything because they got 500 feet of asphalt on the exit of every corner. You miss an entry at Sonoma, you're probably going to lose 5 to 10 seconds through the grass. Well, you miss a corner here at Chicago, in the wall, night is done. There is not that margin for error at a track like this. We pick up the battle for the number 11 spot, the one that was vacated by Grant Davis knocking down the wall. Gregory Schall in the 66 leading this conglomerate of cars. Dunkelberger behind, Lariah, Cato, Pooler all in line, but a little bit of space between all of them as these drivers try to get settled in for this 40-lap race. A little bit less than the halfway distance of the scheduled cup race length, but also a little bit longer than the actual race length as you see Matt Danson moving back and underneath, getting around a little bit of lap traffic. Agnew Phillip wants more, and they have been doing this, Nolan, for about 2 to 3 laps now, and there's a shot to Merchant. Pushes Phillip nearly by Danson. The 38 car throws a block. William Schmidt gonna watch on from P7, but this is far from done in the battle for 4th.
Thought for a moment Virtue would try to hang one around the outside of turn number 4 down through 5. Ended up thinking a bit better of that one as well. Exit East Roosevelt rolled back onto Columbus Drive. We rocket up to Gregson's nemesis. Turn 6 down the inside is going to be Agnew Phillip trying to take that one from Matt Danson. Contacted. Phillip gets turned into the wall. Danson continues on to Merchant. We'll take 2 for 2.
Phillip went in deep, and Danson, I think, was about all the way over as you could. Certainly could have lifted, but Agnew Phillip squeezed the 38. Danson held his ground, and he got turned. Let's see if a second look changes any opinions, but again, neither of these drivers, Nolan, was going to cut anybody a break. They had been hitting each other, running each other over, throwing to blocks for about 3 to 4 laps. Phillip fakes to the outside there, and from way back just does that huge dive bomb, but he gets it wound up in time mostly. But I mean, Danson's all the way at the fence there. I don't know if there's much else you can ask from him there. And then Danson obviously not happy with the previous contact, kind of finishes him off. But I think that was Agnew Phillip feeling like, hey, I should have been around this guy 3 laps ago and just trying to get the job done, and did a little bit too much.
And of course, Danson is under absolutely zero obligation to lift in that situation. He's fully allowed to defend for that position, and defend he did. I don't think Danson did anything wrong there. I think that was a mistake, which is Agno Phillip trying to get over aggressive, and it didn't end up panning out. That makes this really a two-horse race between DeMerchant and William Schmidt now for the number 4 spot up on the racetrack, with Cody Harris in third, sitting just a few seconds up the road. A bit of no man's land. 6 seconds up to the leaders, 3 seconds back to the cars behind. Actually, make that about 4 seconds back to the cars behind now, as you can see the gaps from each individual car to one another, so not necessarily up to the race leader as a whole. See DeMerchant, though, starting to build a gap here in this middle section over William Schmidt.
Trying to open things up a little bit. Schmidt feeling pretty good, I would say, having started this race in the number 9 spot and already up to P5. Although I think 9th in qualifying, not really indicative of the speed in that Bowie Esports Chevrolet, because it was better than that in practice earlier tonight. And I mean, you're hanging pretty good step for step here with, Seth DeMerchant, who's certainly no slouch. You can see Danson in the background there with some notable right front damage on his car after the contact with Agno Phillip. You would assume that that's going to be impacting how effective the 38 car is going to be in this race. And, all of a sudden, the top 2 in Kevin King and Landon Mills are a mile away from everybody else on the Chicago street course, 6 laps in of 40. But they don't have a lot of space between them either. So a couple of good battles. First and second's a good one. So is the battle you're looking at now for 4th and 5th.
And here is the gap between the top 2. Still only about 2 car lengths between them, as Kevin King lost a bit of time there coming around through turn 7 off of East Diablo. Had to lift out to avoid striking that left side wall. That's allowed King to close up as he moved through the plaza. And now back across, as you mentioned, the tightest section of the racetrack between that turn 10 and turn 11 stretch. Mills keeps it tucked in line. This is really an interesting road course because there's not really any point where you can really utilize any of the draft. You always have to rely on getting a better drive off the corners than your opponents. The critical thing is the points where Landon Mills is getting runs on King are points where it's not really feasible to make any kind of a lunge.
Well, I think it's a good point to bring up, right? I talked about the complexity of and kind of the layout of this racetrack is it's a lot of 90s, and they are not wide 90-degree corners. At a road course where you expect where you have plenty of room to be able to set up on the inside and do something with it. That's not the case here. So you really have to have the position if you're going to lock it up. I think you're almost more likely to be better off applying pressure, waiting for somebody else to make a mistake, because you're going to have to get that run on the exit of the corner as opposed to getting the run into the corner. You're going to need to be able to gap somebody on the straight. So we continue to watch the battle, and this one is for the race lead. Kevin King took an early race lead away from Landon Mills, who started on pole after Mills and Danson have made contact, and Mills is doing everything he can to hound the 29 to get back up there. But again, we're not even quarter distance in this race. You can't overdrive it. You can't wreck your car. So he sits there and, again, waits for an opportunity. Kevin King, not really somebody that I would, if I was a betting man, Nolan, put money on making a mistake. So it's an interesting duel going on here amongst these race leaders, who are a whopping 7 seconds ahead of Cody Harris in P3 already. Granted, there's been a little bit of fisticuffs back there.
I think at this point, Landon Mills is trying to work smart, not hard. He's trying, instead of forcing the move to happen, he's trying to pressure Kevin King into making that one critical mistake. That'll allow the move to essentially set itself up, as Mills will continue to keep on that back bumper. And sooner or later, there will be a mistake. Probability just says that will be the case, as Kevin King will continue to hang on for the time being. There's also, of course, that train that we had talked about earlier on from about 9th on back started to dissipate. It's really only a 3-horse race now for 11th, 12th, 13th between Dunkelberger, Lorian, and Cato, but there's been relatively unchanged moves in that gap since. As whoa, Mills to the inside of 6, contact, and they both keep it out the wall.
Mills, by the time he got to the inside, King reacted late, and they both tried to kind of pull back the reins. They made contact. I don't know if King ever got into the wall, but they certainly touched each other. Basically, they both tried to avoid the wreck, but Mills certainly the instigator in diving to the inside, and a rare mistake there as Kevin King takes off a little bit of the McDonald's branding on that K-rail as he gives it a bit of a slap on the run out of the Congress Plaza Drive. What is it, a chicane, a curve, a bend? It's a new track, right? We'll come up with our terms and our nicknames as this goes on. There's a good look. Harris, just for reference, P3, the red and white Chevrolet in the background there. But you're watching the battle for the lead. There he is. And then behind him, there's another good reference. The gap from third back to fourth and fifth. There's everybody else that we were talking about. DeMerchant P5, Schmidt, the blue car in the middle there in DeMerchant 4, I should say, Schmidt P5, and then Danson behind them in the number 6 spot. So good visual representation there of the gap amongst our top 6.
This fight for fourth has not gone anywhere since we last cut away from it. It hasn't changed hands, but Schmidt has been really looking to apply the pressure to Seth DeMerchant, and they have both been driving away from Agno Phillip and Matt Danson, as DeMerchant that time by getting a little bit crossed up, had to do some counter steering to keep it out of the McDonald's signage on the left side of the racetrack. Could we see a move this time into turn 6? William Schmidt not going to opt for it. He'll tuck that one back in line. I think he lost too much time trying to back himself up in preparation for DeMerchant to hit the wall.
These two seem so evenly matched. I would maybe give a slight edge to Mills. Of course, I had referenced Mills is feeling pretty good. Won the last race in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series just a week ago at the Nashville Super Speedway. But I just have learned over time to not bet against the likes of Kevin King and others. So we'll continue to watch that as it progresses. Of course, at the Merchant, you would think, on paper, a favorite to William Schmidt Nolan, but gotta say, real impressed at what the 79 car has been able to do so far tonight. And it's not like he had a couple hot laps at the top and then has started to slip away. 10 laps into this joint, he's sticking right there with that 55 Toyota.
Oh, there it is! Locked up for DeMerchant, tries to turn it in. Doors William Schmidt in the process as Schmidt forces the issue into turn number 2. Here comes Matt Danson now trying for the outside of Logitech GL Disease Board's teammate here. Around the outside, and it's not going to happen as Danson will get to the back bumper. He'll try to move that 55 car. I mentioned before, sometimes it's all about just trying to stay on the back bumper and force them into a mistake. Well, the pressure finally got to Seth DeMerchant.
Those two drivers are about, let's do some quick math, about 14 hours apart in time. Matt Danson racing from just out of Melbourne. We're Seth DeMerchant here stateside. So what a battle between those teammates. And you would think, drivers who are affiliated with each other, they're going to be even, more afraid to touch each other. If anything, I would say that Seth DeMerchant and, Matt Danson, they're going to run each other even harder. The fact that they're teammates. And yeah, it was a good move by Matt, right? Tried to go to the outside, maybe a fake a little bit, because then when they came off of the next corner, tried to cross him up. Seth saw it coming, shut the door, took a bit of a shot. That's all. But again, that was all a self-inflicted error. Anytime you see that big puff of white smoke, it's just somebody getting too hard on the brakes, right? These race cars, goes without saying, but if you're not a person who's technical on the knowledge between a race car and a street car, these race cars don't have ABS, right? You slam your right foot down, as we check back in with those race leaders in your street car, your car's going to automatically pump the brakes to make sure they don't lock up and that your car can brake at its maximum efficiency. These race cars don't have that, right? If you slam down your left foot on the brake, that's it, right? Yeah, the car is just going to lock up and go straight into the fence, Nolan. So these drivers try to find that same spot to where they're just leaving enough slack on the brakes so those tires can still rotate and slow the car down. But when you get that puff, it means they braked a little bit too hard, likely because they braked a little bit too late into the corner, and that's where that big puff of smoke comes up. And the only way to get out of that lockup is to actually get off the brake, let the tires start to spin again, and then try to turn out of it. So anytime you get that lockup there, you're putting yourself in a real vulnerable position, and that's why William Schmidt is now up to a race high P4.
Well, and of course, you have to remember as well, it's not just the ABS as well, but it's also getting on the power these drivers have to be careful with. They're not just stamping the throttle, right? They're having to gently roll onto it because there's no traction control in these cars either. So it is 670 horsepower being sent straight to the rear wheels with absolutely nothing to tame it other than the driver staying their right foot. That's why we've been seeing Landon Mills the last couple of quarters kind of kicking out that back end, and it's why we've been seeing drivers like Seth the Merchant kind of stepping out the back end, coming around through the Plaza Drive little, I guess we could call it a chicane. It's not really a roundabout because there's no roundabout there like we have at the Long Beach Street Circuit, but we'll call it the sweeper for now. So when you get down to that plaza, it's off camber, right? And that's, I think, one other thing that does not get mentioned enough. Turn 9, the track is falling away from you, so the car is doing everything in its power to pull the car to the right side of the racetrack, where you have to be hanging it to the left as much as possible to nail the exit out of turn 10.
Yeah, that kind of is the most characteristic part of this track. And of course, that bend is right in the middle of Grant Park. This track races around Buckingham Fountain. You saw the Bean and some of the scenics earlier. Butler Field right down there as well. But that bend in the middle of the racetrack on East Congress Plaza is kind of the center point for downtown Chicago, right through the middle of Grant Park, where this racetrack is all situated. Race leaders now taking lap number 13 of 40. Some lap traffic on the horizon for them. Kevin King was about to get to Eric Papineau, and Eric saw that one. He pulls to the wayside, allows King and Bills to drive on through, and they are by without issue. 17 of the 24 cars who started this race still on the lead lap. Couple of retirees so far. Richard Wolsifer's night is done. Brandon Bowie's night is done. They have both gone to the garage. Grant Davis's night likely done. However, the Battle Beaver car is still on pit road getting service. We'll see if it does return to the racetrack. And then interestingly, Mike Kaczynski and Nicholas Mara were scheduled to compete in this one, but did not take to the green flag, so they will get a DNS for this one.
No practice or qualifying laps logged for either driver as well, so I guess maybe they had second thoughts. There's trouble in front of this battle, smoke up the road. That's courtesy of Ryan Dunkelberger, who just went into the turn 7 wall off of East Balbo Drive. They'll pull to the right, allow this fight for the lead through. But that stacked up Kevin King a fair bit. You saw how much Landon Mills was able to reel in as King had to really back off through 7 because he wasn't sure where that car was going to be. You could see the smoke. You're not sure where the source is, though, until you actually get up and around the corner.
Look at the tail kicking out there as they come off of the corner for Kevin King. Nolan, it seems like every time I stop talking, something scary happens with the race leaders. The first time it was the lockup for King, and the second time it was the drive straight into the fence for Ryan Dunkelberger. Both times, both King and DeMille was able to get by, but not without some fireworks, and maybe fittingly so on this 4th of July week. Still a long way to go, and again, with danger at every corner, you really can't take your eyes off of these top two. They are both hanging the back ends of these race cars out every single time around, and as they get more and more traffic, more and more potential for some scaries. You got Brandon Fetterplace next up, Steve Tucker next in line, so they've got 2 lap cars coming up pretty quick. Here's a good opportunity for Fetterplace to yield to them, but he will not, and will this affect King? King going to go for the dive, but now Mills, oh, there's big contact there! Not what you want to see, but Fetterplace did not commit one way or the other. He did not intend on yielding to the leaders, but then Kevin King went to make the move, then he tried to yield, but when he pulls back in, Mills is following the racing line, and Fetterplace looking like Carlos Sainz in an FP2, just in no man's land, blocking the racing circuit, and that may be the difference maker in this race because it splits up those leaders big time.
I think what kind of contributed the most of that was the fact that Fetterplace was locked up going into that corner as well. And at that point, once you lock up and you know the leaders are trying to get around you in an active battle, just give it up. Go straight on into the corner, let them through it. When he tried to commit to the corner still after locking up, that's what really cost them big time. And I know for a fact I would be fuming if I was Landon Mills at that, because now I've got damage on my front end. I don't know how bad things are going to be until I get around to the pit stop window. I can only hope now that lap traffic finds a way to get up in the way of Kevin King to slow him up, to back him up right more towards me. You see another lockup there that time from Seth the Merchant down in towards turn 2 off of East Bulbo Drive, and the Merchant even got to the back bumper of William Schmidt that time by entering turn number 2.
Just checking in on some of the intervals throughout the field. Mills has settled back in about 2 seconds off of King after their contact. And I think the battle you look at here is William Schmidt continuing to try to play that defense on Seth the Merchant. Those intervals left-hand side of your screen are to the next closest car, right? So any low number means it's a pretty good battle. And that's why the Merchant 1.3. That's the gap to Schmidt ahead of him. So Danson only about 1.9 behind them. What's the closest one? Well, the 8 car, Alexander Light, 0.90 back. That means he's only a second behind Woodruff, and we look at it now. It's the battle for the number 8 spot.
This fight for 8th is sitting about half a lap now behind race leader Kevin King, so they've been losing time, I think, a bit more considerably than you would see at an oval track, or even at a more conventional road course like Sonoma or at the Glen, as we see Alexander Light track a bit wide, and I think just barely scrape the paint on the left side of wall as we fire back up Jackson and towards Columbus. I do think that's kind of what's allowing for these guys to back off a little bit more. The fact that they're driving so timidly right now. You can see all of these racers have clean cars. That's one thing a lot of your guys fight at the top 5 do not have, because they've been rebounding off the walls left, right, front, and center. These drivers are just trying to survive this race and get to the end.
And if you're in one of those battles or maybe lack thereof, right? If I've got 4 seconds to the car behind me, 3 seconds to the car ahead of me, right? Whatever that interval is, you can go 60%, 70% and still be quick, right? But what is going for the extra half a tenth of a second per lap going to do for me if I'm P9, right? If I'm Alexander Light, I don't want to overdrive the car. Shaw's behind me, let it play out, and there's a big note there. Fastest lap of the race belongs to Kevin King. I had said that I thought Mills might have been a little bit better between the two of them, but with Mills likely suffering from damage and the contact with the lapped car, Kevin King letting us know that ain't the only reason why the 29's up front, because he's got the fastest lap of the afternoon.
Closing in on that halfway mark in this race as well, and a couple of drivers have already made pit stops throughout the course of the day, but usually it has been for forced pit stops, having to come on down into pit road just to get some damage fixed to make sure the car's even drivable. And already out of the 24 that started this race, you've only got 13 at this point left on the lead lap, with the 13th place driver being San Mieto at the moment, who's sitting. In fact, I just saw him exit the tail end of the shot right at the bottom of the screen as we watched Kevin King flash by through the plaza. There he is, San Mieto, right at the bottom of the shot again, fading off stage left. So these guys are losing time quickly. Minati Major, of course, started down in the last position, but they're not putting down a qualifying lap. He's already been lapped once this race. He's about to be lapped again, and he's got a clean car. So Minati Major already down 2 laps on pace alone. And I think a lot of that is the intimidation that a road course race brings about, right? Because you never see drivers being lapped this quickly at a more conventional road course circuits. It's the fact, though, that there's so much little room for error. You cannot afford to go wide, even at the slightest point. With these cars having, of course, the newer damage model as well, damage is so much more sensitive. I've already had several discussions with drivers over the last few months about this, about how before you could scrape along the wall pretty decently. Now, you tap it the wrong way, it's going to knock a towing out.
There's a jump back to Agno Phillip in a minute, since we've talked about the driver of the 94 entry, him and Matt Danson, something that I think most people would suspect would be a battle for the race lead here right now. Just a battle for P6 and 7. They have both had their fair share of ups and downs and bumps and bruises.
In fact, was it not Danson that Phillip also got into to kind of create that whole melee? That's what allowed the Merchant of Schmidt to find their way through as well. So Agno Phillip and Matt Danson have had history in just this race alone, and could very well be seeing things come to blows again, as last time by, Phillip was about 0.4 of a second faster than Matt Danson. In fact, that can carry on over to the last few laps. And in fact, 2 laps ago, Agno Phillip was 1.1 seconds faster. So Phillip has, as always, been playing the long game here. And is now right up the back bumper of Matt Danson.
He is right there. Again, almost disappointing to an extent that it's not a battle for the race lead, because these are 2 titans of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. And, you know, not in a bad spot. Listen, if I was P6 in a cup race with this caliber of field, I'd go and buy a lotto ticket later in the day. But, you know, kind of curious how much of this is, you know, well, I'm not up front. I'm realistically not going to make up a 30-second gap. So no need for me to push, or is it, you know, these cars are probably not 100%. You just saw briefly a bit of smoke off a Seth the Merchant's car in front of those 2 as he almost had an issue in that right-hander turn number 2. Jumping back to Richard Woodruff, him and Alexander Light have been pretty close to one another for some time now, and that 8 car of Alexander Light trying to finally find a way through, can't do it there.
Work our way back around to East Roosevelt Drive as we got cars back into pit road. Of course, Gregory Shaw right at the tail of the shot, kind of hit a bit by Ross Cato, who has been in pit road ever since lap 14, so about 6 laps ago. But Shaw is into the pits for his scheduled stop, taking 4 tires and fuel, likely getting some damage repairs while he's down in the pits there as well in the Crown Royal Chevrolet. They look back up, though, to this fight with Richard Woodruff and Alexander Light coming on down in towards turn 7. You see a kick in the back after Woodruff as he tries to stamp the power to kind of compensate for the lockup he did. Light really starting to get, I think, to the number 27. I think we're not going to see too long before we see Richard Woodruff make the same mistake that almost cost Kevin King the lead earlier on.
And it was a twitch that time by Light, who you talked about the on-throttle aspect, right? I talked about the challenges getting in. You talked about the challenges getting off, trying to get the power down. That was an off-throttle mistake there for the 8 car. Tires were fine through it, but he fishtailed it, lost a gap, and now has to make up the ground. Typically, when you see 2 cars stuck together for some time like this, it would imply, more times than not, that it's because the car behind's a little bit faster, right? If they were actually even, I'd be shocked. It's typically, probably, in this case, Light's maybe a little bit quicker, but you go back to the same dilemma that we've talked about in the battle for the lead and the battle for third over and over tonight, is that where is the opportunity to make the pass? We've seen people make clean passes, Nolan, but every time they do it, it is a little bit sketchy, and there's a shot thrown back in the direction of Kevin King. Landon Mills fires back. New fast time of the night, a 1:25.115. Still from second. That's about 8 seconds off of the race lead.
And noting on lap 17, there was a huge time loss, because I'm just noticing now Landon Mills, 8.2 seconds back. He was only 2 seconds back a little while ago, and looks like turn 7 caught Landon Mills out as he went straight on and kissed the tire barrier. That's where he lost a good chunk of time. That might be a race ender potentially for Landon Mills. We'll see if we can get a look at that one, as this will be coming around through turn 6, about 1 corner prior to the incident. This would have been on lap 17 as well. So take a look at this one. Up and over the hill through East Bobble Drive, down into turn 7, too deep on the brakes, straight on, little kiss of the barrier. Not too much damage, just a lot of time loss.
And that notably why the gap goes from 2 seconds to that 8. Back into this battle, Alexander Light getting a little bit more aggressive as time continues to pass. Realistically, this battle for 8th, I think, is about as high as either of these drivers are going to be able to get, unless they've got some of the MWR race fuel, jet fuel in these cars, because then it's Agno Phillip P7, and that's about 24 seconds up the road. So for these guys, this is kind of like the battle for the race win, right? You got good pace. You're better than the average, right? You're running in the top half of the field, and this is likely the highest spot you're going to be able to get based on speed unless somebody else wrecks out. So, nobody wants to finish, oh, I could have got that one more spot. This is really, I think, why Alexander Light's starting to push, but halfway now officially, so we're starting to count down and getting closer to the end of this race. But I've just seen so many mistakes from the veteran drivers that it makes, I think, this battle between Woodruff and Light that much more impressive because, knock on wood, I know it's coming, but neither of these guys have really put a foot wrong so far in this fight. It's been clean and it's been aggressive. Light's gotten close to the bumper. He's never made it to the inside or to the outside of the 27. He's right on the deck lid there, but still just that couple of feet short.
Just say, I mean, he's able to close in so much in turns 1 and 2. That is where Alexander Light is in his prime. But the problem is, again, when you get a good run out of turn 2, which he always does, you can't make a look at a turn 4. It's just not feasible, and he's going to slap the wall that time with the exit of 5, and that's going to cost Light some time. Now, I think at this point it's pretty clear that Alexander Light is the quicker of these two drivers. He's going to lunge for the inside this time on Richard Woodruff, and I think Richard backed off of it and just let him have that one easy. Richard could tell the writing was on the wall, and he decides to let Alexander Light go. I was just about to mention, if I was Light, I might want to go for an undercut strategy here to try to just get him on the pit stops. Then you don't have to worry about fighting him on track.
It's a true point, but yeah, I think we've historically seen drivers, go for the pit cycle, get the better tires, swap out. But I mean, here we've seen the fastest times of the night be late in this race. So I don't know if you get that conventional kind of underswap. Kevin King, those guys, they all pitted shy of the halfway point at about lap number 16 or so. So I think most everybody starting to get to the point where they're almost all going to be good to go to the end of this race. It's a good perspective here from Cody Harris. We haven't talked a lot about him, Nolan, in third. Oh, man, I thought he was going into the wall there for sure. Let's just enjoy this for a minute and go around this racetrack with Cody Harris and just look at how close he gets to the walls basically all the way around this entire circuit.
Whoa, straight on into turn 11. Goes Grant Davis right in front of Cody Harris. Prime example of why I've always got to be under game. That's what happens if you break even a couple of feet too late. And now once you get into one of the runoffs here, it is not easy to turn the car around, right? You want to flick spin the car, you're likely going to rebound off into one of the walls. And obviously, if you try to get around elsewhere, you're looking at a 5-point turn minimum.
Every lap, no margin for error. And again, Cody Harris's night may have been quiet to this point because he wasn't in some of those bare knuckle brawls, but he's doing a great job of maintaining P3. The gap has closed a little bit between Schmidt and him, but it's still a mighty 15 seconds, which is likely unsurmountable before you get to the end of the race. More pit service action is on pit road. It comes a couple of the heavy hitters dancing down pit road. Seth the Merchant, the lead car as these drivers come in.
The Merchant into pit road, just behind Matt Danson. Now Agnell Phillips stopped. 1 lap ago as well. He'll be looking to get the both of them, and Philip will... Oh, it's going to be side by side, and getting cut off on the pit exit. Danson gets out just in front of Philip by about half a nose. Ready for round 2?
Let's run it back. Here we go. Here comes Agnew Phillip. These two, I think it's safe to say, were heated with one another in those opening 5. Have they had time to cool down? Well, there's your answer. No. Off the brake and into the bumper, and Danson goes, Philip, that's just a hello shot, just so he knows you're there. And we'll see if anything else comes from it.
I think the reason why Philip backed off as well is because when you gave him that nudge, he struck the inside wall as a result, so it ruined his corner exit on the pace. Now, right now, Danson is still trying to get the tires back up to temperature. Philip's had a lap to do that as it was, so Philip is absolutely pushing right now in the 851 Pro Chevrolet as he'll work to close the gap down to Matt Danson this time by. Lunges onto the brakes into 11, up Jackson now and back over the bridge, down for the final corner, back to the start-finish stretch. I think if the run's going to be coming from Philip, it would have to coming down South Shakemore, or Lakeshore, excuse me.
We will see. And again, context matters. This battle for 6th and 7th, or 5th and 6th, I should say. 7th behind them at Alexander Light would be the one to benefit if something happens in this, as Light has been able to get around Richard Woodruff in one of the previous battles that we had talked so much about. But again, I still think Phillip's a little bit of a quicker one, and well, Danson is going to be in no mood to yield to him to get out of his way. So, you know, battle for the race lead, 6 seconds apart. This might be the most entertaining battle for P5 we've seen in a while. Here's a good run. He's got a bit of a speed advantage, but I don't think it's enough to make the move. To the outside they go. In the run down Columbus Drive, there's the left-hand kick. Danson too deep, and there goes Agnew Phillip. Now Danson comes back on the inside. Phillip locks up the tires. We're not done yet. The 38 car right on his bumper. More contact now.
Smoke up the road as Nieto got into the wall. He's slow on the racetrack, and he might get involved in this fight here at the tightest section of the racetrack. Philip's going to get checked up down to turn 11. This is exactly what Danson needs to try to fight this one back. Nieto pulls over to the right to let this battle through. Philip goes offensive. Danson's not having it. Down the final corner to 12. Philip still tracks out from the wall, and he'll be able to maintain that momentum down across start finish. What a crossover from Agnew Phillip down at turn 6. Made that move perfectly. It's not going to matter. It's another hit from Danson to Phillip into turn 1. Phillip hangs on. Danson back to the inside for 2, but he's going to be too deep, and he's back under the wall. Phillip goes through, and Danson takes him out.
They were going back and forth. Danson behind Phillip goes for the dive bomb. The 94 anticipates. Lets Danson drive it into the fence and then bounced off the wall and hooked him. Not what he wanted to do. And he will yield the position to Phillip because of that. Here was the dive bomb. Agnew saw it coming. Danson just hits the wall, just bounces right off into the left rear. No intent there. Takes out Agnew Phillip. Phillip's night goes from bad to worse, and you can see Danson to pull over immediately, yields the position, not his intention. However, that's not going to help out the night for Agnew Phillip too much because it was already, for his standard at least, less than he would like. And it's only going to get worse and worse as he continues to fall down the line.
You know, I'll give Danson credit, though. I mean, Danson's gotten a lot of flack from moves earlier on in the season. That's sportsmanship right there. You don't intend to make a mistake. You know there's not going to be a caution out of it. Slowed up, redressing. He didn't have to do that, right? He lost himself a good 3-4 spots, including to his own teammate, as a result of that deal. So Danson did not have to do what he did, but he decided to sacrifice his own race to redress what he thought was a wrong incident. And I will give Danson huge props to that. That's one reason why I do still like Danson as much as I do. And of course, Matt will now try to go back at Agnew Phillip. This time we'll see if he can do it the right way, coming around in towards turn 2.
More pit services. Landon Mills will pit from the number 2 position on the racetrack, so he will get his service in and out. And to no surprise, we talked to drivers putting down fast laps late in these runs. He goes for fuel only, but comes out right next to Cody Harris. Harris was right alongside. It was almost bad when they both blended into turn 1 together, but now the 26 car will be able to pull and stay ahead for P2.
Now, Kevin King, I do not believe has come down to pit road yet. In fact, he is, I think, one of the last drivers we're waiting on to come on down to pit road. But it's worth noting that King's lap times have not fallen off that much at all. His fastest lap was a 125.3 that he set on lap number 16. He was running higher 125s and low 126s earlier in the run, and he ran 125.3s all the way up to about 2 laps ago. So he hasn't had to pit until he ran out of fuel, which Kevin King will now come down into pit road. Here's the fight as well, getting around him for Philip Danson and now Richard Woodruff in the fray. I tell you what, the racing is only kicking off in the midfield here from Chicago.
Every battle, 1st, 11th, 21st, how many cars are there? 24th? Even if it was for 31st, they would all still be just as aggressive. And Danson has some more problems in the midfield. Look at this mess. Would you ever guess that he and Agno Phillip got together again? This time, though, it was not the fault of either of them. It was a mistake by Alexander Light. Light had just gotten around a battle with Woodruff earlier in the day, and then he self-spins in front of these two, and there was nowhere for them to go. It's up the road, right? He's out of sight, out of mind, dancing to the inside of Phillip. Up the road, Light spinning. Road is blocked, nowhere to go. They touch. What a rough night for Phillip and Danson, who could easily have both been top 3 cars.
You know what Danson was doing, though? He was laughing throughout all of that. Danson is loving this right now. He is in his element, and now he's got 2 cars with himself and Adam Phillip both in position. He'll shoot to the inside of Michael Araya. Tries to overtake the 44 again at turn 11 and makes that an easy pass. Now it's to get around Richard Woodruff, who currently sits number 6. And this will be the fight for 5th place. It's a 3-way fight. Laraya takes it down to pit road. I don't believe he had made a pit stop yet on the afternoon. He had not. So Laraya in for a scheduled pit stop, which will leave it a 3-horse race for that last spot inside the top 5.
Light also comes in for service after his self-spin. You can also see the damaged car parked on pit road. That one of Ross Cato, who I believe is going to finish 21st in this one. And one more punch maybe in the battle for fastest lap of the night. 124.738. Landon Mills, P2 on track. But number 1 in your hearts is P1 on the fastest lap board. I don't know, Nolan. I don't think I'm convinced with 10 laps left to go in this race that he's going to make up a 4.4 second gap to King just on, beating that best lap of the night by a 10th or so alone. But he is at least close enough to be in the game if something happens. And Kevin King, in his own right, hasn't been picture perfect tonight. So, not out of the realm of possibility.
The fights are only going to continue to grow more and more intense as we hit 10 laps to go this time by. Danson has now got his teammate, Seth the Merchant, right behind him to contend with. They had their own little scrap earlier on in this race, and it's another bumper. Oh, and now Woodruff gets taken out, this time, though, by Seth the Merchant. You know what's the kicker in that whole deal? Woodruff said, "I'll let you have it." He was pulling aside to try to let them all through.
The issue is, again, you got to commit sooner on when you're going to let somebody go. We saw this earlier, right? Woodruff would have been better advised to have just pulled over to the right-hand side of the road, because the left-hand side is obviously the entry part to the corner. And then once Danson hit him, he's like, okay, let me move. But he pulled right in front of Demergent. All I can say, Nolan, is that bad things happen around the 38 car. I'm not saying Matt Danson's doing it, but bad things happen when the 38's in the camera shot. And he's having fun, right? This must be so much fun for a guy like Danson, a guy like Demergent, for King, for Mills, for Harris, all these guys who enjoy racing these kind of stock cars on road courses have got to be having a blast.
I didn't even pick either to win this time, so I don't know how everything is going down right around where those two are. That's usually not how this is supposed to work. So somewhere in the script, things have gone awry, as Woodruff, in fact, was letting them by because he had to pit that lap. So the call was that he was trying to pit in, which is why you saw him stop at the track, back up, and then make his way down into pit road as well. But now Danson free to fight it out with teammates Seth the Merchant, as Agno Phillip has, as a result of all of that, just driven off into the distance with that 5th position.
He is checked on out. Phillip, maybe deservedly so, going to get one of his first opportunities to breathe a sigh of relief in this race and not always have to be so high-strung, because he's been up and down, in and out in some of these battles tonight. So I think Phillip, maybe deservedly so, just hoping for a calm 8 laps to get to the end of this race. And oh, by the way, I know I referenced it when Bills did it, so King deserves his due as well. He now back with the fastest lap of the race, taking it back from Mills with a 1:24.627.
About 7.5 laps left to go now for race leader Kevin King, who has continued to drive away. Landon Mills has been working to close that gap down. It's gone from the 8 seconds it was before down to about 4.4. I don't think it's closing quick enough, though, for Landon Mills to actually be able to have a say in how this race could pan out. I think that mistake that he had about 10 laps ago over in turn 7 is the one that was the nail in the coffin for him.
Well, there's another one, just for good measure. And like I said, these cars do got a little bit more sheet metal on the wheels than the open wheel racing that I've referenced before. I heard Seth the Merchant's car when it hit the wall.
And no kidding. I mean, Seth the Merchant has been he's been turning up the wick the last little while, and he has not shown any qualms and flirting around with that outside wall, trying to get himself rolling. So Matt Danson is going to work to try to get himself sorted here, as he'll try to fend off his team behind it. They have been matching each other on lap times fairly consistently. The Merchant overall, I think, has been just a small touch quicker, but that can, of course, be contributed to Matt Danson constantly having to battle his way up and down throughout the field quite consistently.
We stand at only 7 cars left on the lead lap in this one. The number will likely end at 5, as DeMerchant and Danson, who we've been following for so much of this race, are about to get caught by your race leader, Kevin King, who we're looking at now. So those two are just up the road in the chicane down to 1 and 2. There they are. It may be the only scary thing left for Kevin King to get through tonight, Nolan, with the way that those two have been racing, and the fact that Landon Mills has been able to get that gap solidly down to 4 seconds. There he is there. Kevin King can afford to take a little bit of time trying to figure out what DeMerchant and Danson are going to do up the road, but he doesn't have a whole ton of time, and I think that's kind of the only big question mark left, standing between King and victory.
See Kevin King still working his way throughout the race lead, and he is showing no desire to go anywhere anytime soon. He is now starting to also close up towards that battle for the 7th position, so it might very well be cut off. Your fight between DeMerchant and Danson by 1 lap as Kevin King started to enter the fray. He's about 1 or 2 corners behind them now, and he is closing in a hurry by over a second a lap. So Kevin King, absolutely the driver to beat. Landon Mills continuing to reel in the gap, under 4 seconds now. But again, with coming to 5 laps to go, it's not nowhere near enough to be able to make that gap up.
There's the onboard look with Kevin King as he continues to chase down probably the fastest lap traffic that he's had to deal with tonight in DeMerchant and Danson, who will be up next. Just ahead of them, Agnell Phillip could be a possibility, right? I mean, Danson and DeMerchant aren't going to back it down at all. They're only 2 seconds off, and there's even more lap traffic causing problems up the road to this. They're 3 wide ahead of your race leader. There's the tail end of it as they go over the crest and over the subway lines. Off and into one, more smoke left over still from all the brakes locking up, but look at this absolute mess that Kevin King just caught. He needs to find a way by. Landon Mills only now 3.5 seconds behind him.
And Kevin King sends one to the inside of Gregory Shaw. You saw the log. I'm not sure Shaw was fully expecting that, but Kevin King made it work, made it happen. And now you've got more trouble up the road as 3 wide with lap traffic and DeMerchant scraping the left side wall. They're trying to get up to Matt Danson. Danson is in big trouble now with his teammate right there, and the race leaders trying to lap them both.
Trying to get around both of them, and now there's a lockup courtesy of the 55 DeMerchant. So Kevin King is there trying to find victory in his first race of 2023. Danson clips the wall ahead. Looks like a 3-way battle for the lead. The leader's at the back of all of this. Mills now just 3 seconds off of the race lead. He's made up a second in the last few laps, but he just hit the wall in the background of your shot there after he made contact with Gregory Shaw. So Mills also struggles a little bit with now 4 laps to go.
4 laps left to go. This is continuing to pick up as Kevin King has to scramble as DeMerchant scrapes the outside wall on turn 7. Matt Danson really trying to fight to keep both these drivers at bay. They're catching Carl Pooler now. All of this lap traffic keeps on getting caught in exactly the worst opportunities on the racetrack for this fight for 6 as well as the race leaders. It'll be 3 laps to go for Kevin King this time by.
Kevin King trying to close this race out, but he has, as Johnson dives to pit road next to them, DeMerchant, Danson, Pooler, Light, Phillip, all lined up less than 2 seconds ahead of him, and King's going to make a move here. There's a mistake for DeMerchant, and DeMerchant will yield. Pulls to the left-hand side, allows Kevin King to get on through. That's a big challenge out of the way. It started with a mistake from the 55, and then DeMerchant recognized that and yielded. Also, Pooler pulls to the side, will allow Kevin King to get through, so he's past 2 of them. Spinner in front, look out! Alexander Light right in front of the race leader, but Kevin King finds a gap.
Oh boy, that would have been the second time that Danson had a battle come to blows with Alexander Light spinning out, and that time Light just towed to the pit road. There was no way to get out, and look out! Oh! Danson into the wall, and then tagged by DeMerchant as Kevin King fought his way through the both of them. King went for a lunge. Danson wasn't expecting it, and it's getting physical with the teammates.
Kevin King knew that he had to find an opportunity when it presented itself. He went to the inside, got by, and it resulted in that contact between the lapped cars of Danson and DeMerchant. DeMerchant paid back the 38 car, gave him a shot. And while Mills has continued to close, the gap is less than 3 seconds. I think that was a big, big lap for Kevin King because he has gotten by the traffic jam and now takes 2 laps to go on the streets of Chicago with clean racetrack both in front and behind him.
2 laps to go. Landon Mills closed down to under 2 seconds, but with this fierce fight in front of Landon Mills, still has no hope of working his way with Kevin King unless King makes a monumental error in the closing laps.
Never say never, but Kevin King looking a heck of a lot better now than he did about 5 minutes ago when all of that daunting lap traffic was ahead of him. And as it stands now, 5 cars left on the lead lap. That's where I guessed that it would end. You can see Phillip up the road from Kevin King. King is running about 0.3 faster than Agno Phillip every lap. So if he gets close to him, I wouldn't be shocked. But because there's no threat for position from Agno Phillip, if he just pulled over and get out of the way, I would expect he would yield if he gets close. But I don't think King going to get close enough for that to be warranted. It's his penultimate time through the right hand, turn number 12, and back onto the front straightaway. Barney, the flag man, stands ready. White flag in the air. 1 lap to go for Kevin King.
And boy, oh boy, that fight for 6 still going absolutely nowhere. You saw Divergent on the timing screens get up and around Matt Dance with a bump and run. Coming from turn 11 down to turn 12. Danson takes it back as Divergent takes himself out at turn 1. And that's going to end that fight real quick, leaving it just Kevin King all alone up in the front of the field. He's already built the gap up to over 3 seconds.
He's got his little bit of a safety net back, and he's going to pull onto the long trip down South Columbus Drive to head to the back half of the racetrack. This, though, appears to be tonight where some of the most tricky corners have been. Left-hand turn 6, Danson hit the wall here a couple of laps ago. King is clean there. We've seen a whole lot of cars miss this one. Downhill, hard braking, right-hand turn 7, King good again. Closes it on Phillip, not going to be a factor. Final set of corners. Kevin King really wanted to be able to get into this race for his first start of the season, and that's exactly why he puts on a show and wins RSR's debut race on the streets of Chicago.
What a win for Kevin King. Had to really work for it in the first half of the race, was able to just take it home and drive smoothly over in the second half. Kevin King will take it home for what was an absolutely incredible race at the Chicago Street Circuit.
No major battles throughout a host of cars. 1 lap down, 2 lap down, that will get about 38, 39 laps completed to the end of this one. But in those top 5, Harris hangs on comfortably for that P3 that we had talked about previously. And it's going to be an impressive finish as some of the lapped cars come across the line. I think for that man right there, the 7 of William Schmidt, P4, as he looks to close it out.
Oh boy. And Will Schmidt and Agno Phillip will be the last 2 drivers, I believe, that will finish this race on the lead lap after an absolutely intense ride from everybody involved with the Chicago Street Circuit. Schmidt crossed the line to take 4th. I believe Phillip and Fetterplace will be the last 2 that we're waiting on to take that checkered flag. I think kind of like the wet race, this race definitely, I think, a lot more entertaining than a lot of drivers were expecting, a lot of fans were expecting. I tell you what, I thought it might get a bit dull around that halfway point. Never let it down for a moment.
Somebody was always trying to knock a wall down or spin somebody out, it seems, right? We take a look at our full race results tonight. Kevin King, the final margin of victory, did dip down 2.8 seconds, closest it got all night long at the end there. But he's able to hang on, and Harris again stays out of the drama for that P3. Schmidt, Phillip, Merchant with Danson, Lariah, Dunkelberger, and Tucker, the top 10.
11th place going to be Brandon Fetterplace with Carl Fuller and 12. It is Eric Papino, Richard Woodshorf, Sam Vietta, Michael Johnson, Alexander Lay, Gregory Shaw, Manatzi Major, and Thomas George for the top 20.
And around out the field on this one, all these drivers not making scheduled distance will include Grant Davis, Ross Cato, Richard Wolsifer, and Brandon Bowie. It's a look top to bottom at your full race results, and I want to give one more big thanks to our partners at Get Wet Sports for presenting tonight's broadcast. GetWetSports.com is the world's first digital content library that showcases and celebrates gamers of all sizes and backgrounds. That includes iRacing, military gamers, women in gaming, and more. Getting listed is free. Find out more at GetWetSports.com and start on your content creation journey today. We take in some of the scenic sights of downtown Chicago. Let's take in the sights and sounds of RSR Victory Lane. Kevin King is your race winner tonight on the streets of Grant Park, and we are trackside with him now. Kevin, congratulations on the win. P2 on the grid, but contact in turn 1 meant you got out front early. Tell us about this start. I'm going to chalk it up to being speechless, Nolan. We'll give Kevin King an opportunity to try to fix his microphone. In the meantime, let's slide the Landon Mills because he's got plenty to talk about after his night. Almost closed it in at the end. Wasn't able to wrap it up. Your trackside with him.
Sure am, and I think for Landon Mills, it was something else entirely. Of course, started up on the pole, didn't quite go his way, and obviously, Landon, you found yourself making that little mistake, and I think at the end of the day, that one on lap 17 may have been what cost you a win tonight. Landon Mills, are you with us, or are you just as speechless as Kevin was? Oh, there we go.
There we go. I'm here. I couldn't get the thing. But no, I'm here. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said, but technical difficulties, I guess.
I was just mentioning, obviously, you had yourself a bit of a tough night. Obviously, you finished this race second place. Not bad, all things considered, but it's not the first to win you were hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun one. It was tough. Coming off a win, I think a week ago, where were we at? Nashville. That was great to get the momentum for this league. But yeah, Kevin didn't make any mistakes this whole race, and I made a couple, and they cost me. And that's just been a theme here: staying clean, sacrificing a little bit of lap time, but just hitting your marks. And ultimately, I made a mistake and kind of forgot to shift down to second and got stuck in the tire barriers for a good 8 seconds or so. But yeah, I just couldn't find my way back to the front after missing turn 2. And from there, I just kind of felt like I was overdriving a little bit. But yeah, Kevin hit his marks. I was right on him. I just couldn't really get around him. It kind of just a product of the racing. But in the end, we were both so fast, and it was a joy racing. Bumper to bumper for a good chunk of that race.
Well, of course, it's you mentioned, of course, you got that one race win last week from the Nashville Super Speedway, and with this second place, you walk yourself ever closer towards the top 20. Do you reckon you'll be able to fight your way up there in the next couple of weeks to work your way over into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I just keep my car clean and hit my marks, like I did at Nashville, I just didn't make those mistakes, and going forward, that's what I need to do to get in that point position to be eligible for the playoffs. So that's definitely the goal. I think it's easy or well within my range to do so and to get in. So yeah, it's just going to be an interesting couple of eight or so weeks until that starts. So there's some more road courses that I think I'll be fast at. And just tracks all around that suit my driving style. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being up front once again. And like I said, there's a lot of momentum on our team's back right now, it feels. So like I said, want to carry that into yet another race and hopefully be just as fast, if not be contending for a race win like we were tonight.
Atlanta Motor Speedway comes up next, and it's a track that is getting very much the reputation that other plate tracks like Daytona and Talladega have. What's going to be the thoughts as we get set to go racing at our fastest 1.5-mile track on the season?
I actually really enjoy it. I kind of am bummed out that Daniel Eberhardt isn't racing this season, because he was a blast to work with last season and finished, I think, second last year, and I got fourth here earlier in the spring. So yeah, I might be by myself for that one, but that's a fun one. A lot of action and just the way the lanes come in and how they just feel like they're changing every corner, every lap. It's a little bit different than a Daytona or Talladega, so definitely going to be a little bit of a lottery, but it's a lottery that I feel like is well within my right to be good at and have just the luck to put the 26 out front and hopefully contend for a race win.
Well, wish you the best of luck then next week over in Hampton, Georgia. For now, congratulations on your race runner-up here at the Chicago Street Circuit here tonight. And of course, again, wish you all the best of luck next week.
Thank you. Yeah, see you guys in the next week, and moving forward, have a blast to race, and been a blast to race so far in the season. So hopefully we get some more good races going forward.
That was Landon Mills joining us up here in the broadcast booth from your runner-up position. We'll move on down to the likes of Cody Harris. He is the driver that went 5th, finishes 3rd here on the streets of Chicago. Cody, obviously for you, it was another tough race, as it was for so many drivers tonight. Kind of walk us through what this was like from your end.
Well, I did decent. I didn't get a ton of practice. I was on vacation last week, so I only had about 20 laps on the track. But survived turn 1 after there was some contact ahead of me, and then I think we were 3 wide going into 2. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but survived that, and then just kind of settled into rhythm. I bounced off the wall a couple times and had a little damage, but the top 2, Landon and Kevin, man, they were on another level with the lap times they could run.
Obviously, you find yourself fighting a lot in the mid battles right up towards the end, mostly working around lap traffic, but it was a lot of no man's land throughout the first half of that race. Which one did you prefer? When you had to fight for the lap traffic or just stick by yourself?
Well, I liked when I was by myself. I didn't have to worry about anybody doing something dumb or something. You know, you just if you caught a lap car in the wrong spot, it'd get you out of your rhythm. And once I could get a rhythm going, it was good. Then it would just take me a little bit to get going. I wasn't super comfortable with the track yet, so after I'd get to a lap car, it would take me a little bit of time after I got around them to find the lap time back again. But I just got to work on some more consistency here.
Well, now that, of course, we are 1 street circuit deep and the first road course street circuit race ever at RSR is behind us, if this track is set to return over 1 year from now, do you reckon you'll be as excited for it this season, or are you just going to be looking to move on to the next one?
I'll be excited for it. I enjoy things that give a challenge, and it's definitely a challenge to keep it between the walls and not tear up your car. I think I do pretty good in those situations, and then, yeah, hopefully I can have more pace to compete with. There's definitely a lot more lap time out there, but got time to figure that out.
Well, wish you the best of luck then next week at Atlanta Motor Speedway. For now, though, Cody, congratulations on that 3rd place finish at the streets of Chicago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.
That's Cody Harris joining us 3rd place up in the broadcast booth, and that'll take us hopefully up to your race winner once again, Kevin King. We'll take 2nd time's the charm with this one, Evan, as I'll throw things back to you.
You're right. First race of the year, so the credentials weren't figured out. We have allowed security to get him back into victory lane. Kevin, you got us this time.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, there you go. They were trying to keep you away for the trophy. We appreciate you sticking around and chatting with us. Congratulations, first and foremost, on the win. Was that fun from behind the wheel? Because we jumped on board with a couple of you guys throughout the night, and it looked like a blast the way those cars were hanging out and getting close to the fence, and sometimes maybe too close to the wall.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that. No, it's really fun. You first start this track and you're just like, oh, this is terrible. I hate this. But then once you get into a groove and you really figure it out, it's actually really fun. And once you get into like a super fast pace with someone chasing you or you're chasing someone else, it becomes really challenging. So I did appreciate that part of the track, testing for Coke, and then even tonight with the broken car. It's definitely hard. But I do think there's some skill gap there that is to be appreciated. And I had a blast with Landon. He was super quick. Thankfully, I didn't kill my car enough, and I was able to win. So super cool.
You started this race 2nd, and I think we got the tone for it early when there was contact down into turn number 1, and you're able to kind of scoot through to the race lead there. How did you balance some of these other guys bouncing and banging off each other and, making mistakes? Nobody, I think, was exempt to locking it up here or there, missing a corner, getting into the wall. How do you kind of have to temper that aggression, knowing that there is no margin for error here, where at, another road course, if you get a little bit too deep or, you apex a little bit too tight, you get more rumble stripping off, whereas here it's just a wall on either side of you.
Yeah, no, like I said, during testing, I found those limits very quickly, which is super frustrating when you think you're doing it right. And it really just comes down to just practice, knowing kind of what the car is giving you, how you enter the corner, how the car is feeling during the slide, because you're sliding around everywhere. And just knowing like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm carrying like 2 mile an hour too quick right there. I hit the bump wrong and it's not turning or it's locking up. So it's really just laps. And once you get those laps under your belt, you're able to kind of push the envelope a little bit more, especially in the back section of the track. You get really close to the walls. And yeah, it's super tough. And there's times where, Landon was behind me pushing and I was hoping that he would make a mistake. And for my good fortune, thankfully he did. But yeah, it's very easy just to, you turn in a little bit too soon, you clip the fence, you brake a little too late and you're locking up because you hit the bumps with too much speed like I did on lap 1. So it's definitely trying to find all those little angles and all those little speed differences that you have to account for. And you put it together and you start ripping off some really good laps. So it's definitely not easy. So anyone that hits the fence, like, it's okay. Everyone did it. I think I did it about 15 times this race, including destroying my car. So it's definitely hard, but like I said, once you get it figured out, man, it's a blast. So I do like it more than I thought I would have.
You guys were putting laps in the 126s, 125, so I can't wait to try it out later tonight and aim for a 155. Kevin, appreciate you guys putting on a show here tonight. Anybody want to say hi to before we let you go?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. I hit you up pretty late today. Say, hey, I'd like to race this because I had some time, and you and Josh made it happen. So I definitely appreciate you letting me do this. Everyone that's on the Coke side of things, Malik, Timmy, Brody, all those guys are really helping us out, and even Kenny doing round 2. Can't wait to see how that goes. All the Coke guys for doing what they do, all the broadcasters, you do an amazing job. I can't wait to see you back on Tuesday, hopefully, as we hit Nashville. But I'll give a shout out to my Ledford Billiard Supply sponsor for Coke Series, and all the drivers are having a great run. I've been watching you guys every week. You guys are killing it, so keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully I can make some more races when schedule will approve. But thank you so much for having me.
Your race winner here tonight from the virtual Chicago Street Course, Kevin King, 1-1 in 2023 as he takes home the win in our first trip to the Chicago Street Course. And Nolan, he was pretty honest in thinking, I wasn't sure if I was going to be a huge fan of it. And at the end, he had a blast. It was exciting racing. Don't let the intervals tell the story. We got how many different sets of battles among some of the very best in this series, going head to head, driving hard, making mistakes. Anytime those big names are constantly messing up, I think is a sign of a good, challenging racetrack.
I completely agree with you on that one. I think it really has come down to really show that street circuit racing can, in fact, be a lot more entertaining than people tend to give it credit for. It depends on the track and the car, right? You got to find the right combination. And I think what we got right here, this is an absolutely phenomenal combination.
We will continue down the road to this Full Throttle Cup next week. Take away the questions of this week at Ola. We're going back to an historic racetrack at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, but it is not the Atlanta of old. It is our second trip here this season, though. Matt Danson won on March the 20th. He'll look for a repeat.
Looking to go for that repeat at the fastest mile-and-a-half track we got on the calendar. Atlanta Motor Speedway was nothing but action last year, and I'm expecting it'll be absolutely no different this year.
And we hope that you all tune in and join us for that one. Until next time, that is it for us here tonight from the streets of Chicago. On behalf of our entire team at RaceSpotTV, RealSimRacing, everybody behind the scenes who makes the broadcast possible, and for your team tonight. For our producer downstairs, Joshua Lee, for Nolan Rempel, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to say thanks for tuning in, and congratulations to Kevin King, 1-1 in his RSR debut. We'll continue next Monday night on Monday, July 10th from iRacing's virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway. That race and every race of the 2023 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series can only be found exclusively right here on RaceSpotTV. Till next time, good night from Chicago.
But these notes turn death.